Good morning and welcome to The Art of Composition. Thanks for joining me today. I appreciate it. So this is part 7 of my video lecture series on the book, The Painter's Secret Geometry by Charles Boileau. And the painting you see on my screen, it's designed using the 14-line grid, but when you look at it at first glance, it's a little bit difficult to figure out how Boileau is arriving at his conclusion. So what I want to do is I want to demonstrate today how Boileau is arriving at this. So let me jump right into it. And as always, I'm going to be drawing the 14-line grid. I always try to find really good reproductions of these paintings in the book. It's interesting because the book itself, the images they have, they're not great. So if I can find a better image of it, I always try to do that for demonstration purposes. It makes it a little bit easier to figure out what's going on. But even when I start dropping just a few lines from the basic armature, you can see things. For example, this diagonal line here is clearly following the head, the neck, and the chest of the horse. And then these diagonal lines are placing the man's outstretched arm. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw the armature first, but I'll end up eliminating some of these lines to duplicate what Boileau has in his book, so you can see where he's getting it from. And when I drop this diagonal line here, notice how it's picking up the angle right there. If you're interested in the Painter's Secret Geometry, I always recommend purchasing Aristides' books first. It sort of lays the groundwork. When I laid this diagonal line here too, notice how it's following the angle in the horse's head. And when I drop this diagonal line here, it's picking the angle up right here. So let me drop these last two lines. And when I drop this line right here, it's picking up this leg right here in the back of the calf. And some of these, it really becomes quite obvious what's going on. All right, so that's the 14-line grid. And what Boileau is doing, he's dropping two horizontal lines. One right here, where this series of diagonal lines intersect right here in the center. And he's doing the same thing on the bottom, which I believe is right here, if I'm not mistaken. So he's dividing this up into equal quadrants. And then what he's doing, he's dropping additional diagonal lines in these quadrants right here. So he has two crossing diagonal lines in this top rectangle. Then he's doing the same thing here. And I know this is a little bit overwhelming, but I'm going to eliminate some of these lines. And then he's doing it with this rectangle here. He's doing it in all of the quadrants. And he's doing it in the one right here. And when I drop this last one, you can tell it's lining up with that leg. So what you have is you have crossing diagonal lines in each one of these rectangles. You have 4 going horizontally. So in order to duplicate what is in the book, I have to start eliminating some of these lines. So let me get rid of this one and this one here. And then I'm going to get rid of these two crossing diagonal lines on the top and the bottom. And this is basically what Bülow has in his book. And he does eliminate this one here. And this one here as well. I just want to double check. And then he's eliminating this one right there. And then he is dropping a diagonal line right here. I shouldn't have eliminated that line, but that's what he has right there. And that's, of course, follows the angle in the arm right there. So this is what is in the book. And like I said, at first glance, when you look at the illustration in the book, it's a little bit difficult to figure out, well, where are these lines coming from? But as with all things in design, and especially in that book, they're all coming from that main 14-line grid. And that's something important to keep in mind, is that all of these designs, they stem from the 14-line armature, but I'm demonstrating in these videos how you can expand on that to create something entirely different. And when Juliet Aristides talks about design having rules, this is what she's referring to. I think it's in the book Classical Drawing Atelier. She states that there are rules in art, there's rules in design, and within those rules you have limits and boundaries, but within those boundaries you have an infinite amount of variety. So when somebody comes back and says there's no rules in art or design, they're wrong. There are rules, but within those rules you can create, like I just said, an infinite amount of variety, and it does not inhibit creativity at all. And that's another argument that I hear all the time, that these basic grids, the design grids, inhibit creativity, and there's no truth. In fact, it's just the opposite. But that's going to be it for today. I hope this helps, and thanks for joining me.